Tonight, prepare to journey into the unknown as we delve deep into the realm of the supernatural and the extraterrestrial. Welcome back to Strange Encounters. In this captivating new episode, we embark on a spine-chilling expedition to uncover the mysteries that lie beyond our realm. From eerie apparitions to spine-tingling encounters, we will bring you face-to-face with the unexplained. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and send your unexplained and strange encounters to verystrangeencounters@gmail.com. Join us on Reddit at r/verystrangeencounters. You can donate to the channel at Patreon, Buy Me a Coffee, and PayPal, and your donations go toward helping us upgrade our recording equipment. So, sit back, relax, and prepare to be amazed by the mysteries of the universe as we listen to these allegedly true stories on this episode of Strange Encounters. Son Talking to Someone by That One Bounty Girl. My 2-year-old son had a stomach bug last weekend, so to keep an eye on him after he went to bed, I had plugged in the video baby monitor to make sure he wasn't throwing up, etc. Around 11:45 p.m., I noticed the screen light up, which it does whenever it detects sound, and he was seemingly sleep-talking at first, so I listened in, and it was the usual baby gibberish. About 5 minutes later, he had his eyes open, and he was talking to someone. He was looking straight up and pointed in the direction he was talking to. He kept saying, "Go to sleep." As he's only 2, I couldn't make out everything he was saying, just a few words here and there. I swore I could hear a man's voice, but I put it down to being nearly midnight and me being tired. Plus my partner, his dad, was getting ready for bed in the room with me. Fast forward to the next morning. For some reason, I thought I would try something. My grandpa died 5 years ago. Obviously before my son was born, and I was close with him, but I have never shown a photo to my son before. So I found a picture of my grandfather and asked my son who it was. He replied, "Grandpa." I thought I misheard, so I asked again. Same answer. I said, "Where is he?" My son replied, "Upstairs." I took him upstairs and asked where he was again. He then pointed into his room and said, "He's gone." I cried. I think happy tears though. It's nice to know my grandpa is still around, and though he never met my son, and now daughter as well, that he's watching over them. Skinwalker Attack My Friend by Crispy. I remember when I was 16, my friends and I were out. It was my friend Jay, Harley, and I. We were in this decently large park with a lake with massive grass hills surrounding it. After school, we decided to go to the park and lake area, and by this time it was dark since it was winter. We had walked up this hill with a forest line to our right and thick grass bushes behind us. Sitting down, we could see the whole city lit up, and we were just talking. I can't recall what about. Some point afterwards, my friend Jay, who was the loud type, started whistling and shouting because of the echo you could hear. When from behind us, we all heard a whistle back that was the same tone and almost the same pitch. We all looked at each other with a confused look on our faces. When my friend whistled back, after a couple of seconds, once again, we heard the same whistle from the bushes. I know it couldn't have been the echo because by the time whatever had repeated the whistle, the echo was gone. Now, stupidly, my friend decided to shout at it, provoking it, not knowing what it was, and this made my heart drop to my feet. A somewhat rough try at what he said screamed back at us faint but clear. At this point, Harley and I were debating leaving, but Jay said, "Nah, man, come, let's check it out. Don't be wimps." So we followed him. For context, while walking to the bushes about 200 feet to the right was a passage of sorts that when you walked through it, After about a minute, it led to the main road. As Jay was walking closer to the bushes, we were straying off a bit to the exit passage, and we were telling him, "Come on, man, let's just go." I know Harley and I were thinking the same thing, that we hadn't known him that long, and a lot of what he said sounded and probably was a load of BS. After this, I trusted him with my life. Jay started to say he saw and was seeing something, so I said to him, "What do you see?" And he said, like, eyes. At this point, I thought he was lying, but then between him, the bushes, and the moonlit sky, I saw something dart out of the bushes at him. I thought, what the heck? Harley and I looked at each other and ran through the passage, and Jay started to scream. While running, I was picturing it in my head. It must have been at least 6 feet tall, and it was skinny with long limbs but a human-sized head. When we reached the road, we looked back, and I could feel my heart in my chest and the adrenaline flowing. We shouted for Jay. After about 5 minutes, he fell to our feet out of the dark, and we sat him up and asked what it was. He said, confused and with a dull look in his eyes, "I'm not sure." We walked far away from there, and after about an hour of walking, we parted ways, not talking about what just happened. The next day, we met up, and he was covered in black and yellow bruises. Now, I still don't have any evidence except this story, but I wanted to share the story to see what you all think. Rewind by Rue31313. I'm not sure what this was. 42 years ago, when I was 8 years old, my family traveled from Michigan to Mississippi to visit relatives. It was a long drive. I remember the drive, the games to stave off boredom, the he's on my side arguments, the rest area bathroom breaks, etc. We arrived late at night. I remember being greeted by relatives and being excited to see the cousins who were close to the same age as me. We started throwing a football around. It got away from us and bounced across the street, and I darted after it. I remember the shrieking brakes, looking up at the rapidly approaching truck and thinking to myself, oh poo. I remember it striking me, the sickening sound my body made, being twisted as I was thrown into the ditch. I remember hearing people screaming, and then everything blurred into a meaningless jumble. Next thing I can remember is sitting on my bed in Michigan and putting clothes into a suitcase. We were just about to leave for our trip south. I panicked, wet myself, and ran to find my parents. No one believed a word of it, of course. My cousins were tossing a football around when we arrived. I was withdrawn and headachy. I greeted everyone and went inside to bed. I Caught a Ghost Child Spying on Me by Gilgamesh vs. Humbaba. This happened more than a few months back. Let's set the scene. It was a weekend night and late. My fiance had been snoozing for quite a while, along with our Maine Coon cat and Kido. I could hear the rhythmic breathing, their peaceful sounds slowly beckoning me to bed. I had been up and wired from work, and I had to wind down from the workday. I was in the bathroom, pimping and preening, facing the mirror with my back to the door, and listening to one of the YouTube channels that specialize in true horror, camper stories, etc. The door pops slightly open, and I think it's the cat wanting to play or be brushed. But as I'm looking into the mirror to see what or who is at the now slightly open door, I'm confused. No cat, no girlfriend, but what I do see scared me, but only because it was jarring and unexpected. From my point of view, looking into the mirror, I see a well-formed child's face peek its head in the crack of the door and look at me. It's gray and whitish and bluish as well, but it's clearly a child's face and head. The face is small and the eyes have an almost East Asian quality to them. He's looking at me from the top corner opening where the door and wall would meet. There is no body, just a small child's head. Within a few seconds, he realizes that I can see him, and just as quickly as he appears, he pulls his head back around the corner. It was just like something a living little kid would do if they realized that they were caught spying on an adult. My mind questions what I saw, and I run out of the bathroom to see if he's still there, or if my girlfriend was awake and saw him as well. There's nothing in the room, or at least visible to my naked eye. I look at my lady. She's oblivious to it all, still sound asleep. My cat is now stirring, but as far as little ghost boys go, nothing. I get into bed on edge, but at the same time, I didn't feel threatened at all by the child. In the morning, my fiance and I discuss what happened, and at first she tells me I was tired or saw shadows, etc. I describe the child, and I am adamant that this happened, and her guess is that it's her deceased brother, who had physically passed at 2 years old in the year 2001. She shows me a photo, and the face is a perfect match. Her mother, after leaving her father, married a Filipino man, and the little boy was the product of their marriage. Same hair, same face shape, same eyes. I've had more visits from him as well, and we'll describe those in detail at a later date. I whistled in the woods, and something whistled back, by Certain Intention 594. About 2 years ago, my boyfriend at the time and I decided to go on a hike right before the sunset. Yes, sounds dumb, but it's something we had done multiple times before with no issues. There was something about the eeriness of the woods at night that I liked. Not so much my boyfriend, though. To start our hike, we had to go through really tall plants and bushes. We were practically in the middle of nowhere. About a mile into the hike, we came across some abandoned structures and sat down to take a breather. I'm not sure exactly what my boyfriend said to make me do this, but as a joke, I whistled and said, "See, nothing whistled back, we're alone." Not even 20 seconds after saying that, we heard a whistle. It was a bit of a ways from us, but still too close for our liking. We immediately started booking it in the opposite direction of the whistle and didn't look back. After running for as long as we could, we realized we were lost. We wandered around for about 10 minutes before we stumbled across some train tracks that led back into town about a mile or two down the way. It's important to note that these tracks had thick woods lining both sides. The right side is where we came from. At this point, we were walking as we had run out of energy and felt safe. We were wrong to assume that we were safe. We got to the point where we could see the lights from town, maybe a quarter to half a mile away. Down the tracks a bit, we could see very faintly the outline of what looked to be a deer coming out of the right side of the woods. It stopped in the middle of the tracks and just stood there. I attempted to shine my flashlight, but this flashlight was pretty dim. It was just a random one I found in the back of the junk drawer. But as soon as I lifted my light up, it fled. Now, I say fled because ran would not be an accurate way to describe the way it moved. The best way I can describe it is that it looked like it had 4 broken legs and its body was very low to the ground, yet it had unbelievable speed. It almost looked like a bent and twisted monster out of a horror movie. I shined my light into the woods to the left of us, as that's where it had ran, and when I did, I saw 2 glowing eyes that looked to be at least 10 feet in the air. My boyfriend said, "What is that?" in a very concerned tone. I told him, "I don't know. Don't look at it, just run." We ran and ran until eventually we reached town and walked back home. This happened about 2 years ago, and I've tried to come up with logical explanation after explanation of what I saw that night, and still to this day, I can never find a solid, logical answer other than it being something paranormal. I refused to believe what I had seen for a long time, but I know what I saw, and I know I'm not crazy, as there was another person that witnessed the same thing as me. My boyfriend never spoke of it again and refused to speak about it when I would talk about it. I never went hiking at night after that day. The Grinch by Bushido Rockabilly. I grew up seeing shadow people, white shadow people too. When Slender Man got popular, I immediately thought of some of the things I've seen here. There was some sort of entity that would harass the little girls who lived here. Nothing horribly obscene or anything, but my sister used to complain about a figure that would walk around her bed at night and say mean stuff to her. Like it would walk back and forth and call her string bean, an ugly little ginger witch. By the way, after my sister was telling me this all upset, I actually laid off of teasing her for being a ginger for a couple of years. It made me feel really bad. Anyway, she said she could never see its face or anything, but its outline was like the Grinch from the old Christmas movie. She'd always complain about it, and my older cousin, also female, chimed in while she was talking to me about it, and she said she had the same thing happen to her when she would stay here. They both agreed that it lived in a hole in the air between two oak trees that just refused to grow, an area my sister refused to play. Those oak trees have been the same size since I was probably 5 years old, and I'm 33 now. Still the same size. Keep those trees in mind. It gets weird about the trees. So shortly after my friend moved out, about a year later, my girlfriend and her daughter moved in. After about 6 months, her daughter started complaining about the same thing. She was scared to tell us at first. She would come in and wake us up, and we figured it was just her being scared of the dark. She was around 6 at this time. One morning, while we were getting her ready for school, she started quietly telling her mom about it. I could tell she was embarrassed and didn't want to talk about it. I was making coffee and stopped me dead in my tracks. I stopped and squatted down to talk to her and smiled to try to ease her worry and got her talking more about it. She straight up called it the Grinch, like that was its name. She said it just walked around her bed saying mean stuff to her, never touched her or anything. I asked her what kind of mean stuff, and she said, he walks back and forth and he says bad words and calls me fat piggy and dumb little girl and other words I'm not supposed to say. Freaked me out super bad. Started texting my sister about it. I would have contacted my cousin too, but she is estranged from most of the family at this point. So my sister and I talk about it, put up crosses in the house, put up some Norse protection runes, salt at the doors, and sage the house. It apparently subsided after that. So one or all of those worked. When I was walking her to the bus stop for school a couple of months later, she pointed at the area between the two oak trees that won't grow and said, "That's where the stupid Grinch lives. Ha, can't get me any more, stupid Grinch." And then she threw a brick at the trees. That was pretty funny, but I got concerned again and started asking her about it. She said she was fine and hadn't seen him in a long time. I am assuming since I took some precautions and used warding of various types. So I asked what she meant by him living between the trees. She told me he lives in the air between them, like when we watch Stargate. So trying to get more answers before the bus comes, I asked her how she knew that and if she could see him right now. She looked back at the trees and said, "No, he's not here right now. He only comes out at night because the sun makes him invisible." So now I asked if I could see him if I tried. She says, "No, only girls can see him and you're a boy, so you're not supposed to see him." And then the bus came, and we kind of dropped it after that. But ever since then, I've got weird, unexplainable knocking on windows, particularly when I'm in the shower. My girlfriend at the time, the girl's mom, and I split up several years ago, and I still get the window knocking and weird noises. I'm used to it now because that's just life here. It's always been weird as hell. I saw Green Man's face once when I was a kid. Weird piece of property we've got here. For further reference, my girlfriend's daughter never met my cousin and never talked to my sister about stuff like that. So it's not like the idea was planted in her head by them or anything. Later on, when talking to my sister about it, she told me that maybe it's because she's getting older, but as time goes on, she has forgotten more and more about it. She said she doesn't even remember it having the outline of the Grinch anymore. She remembers calling it that and knowing that it looked like the Grinch before, but doesn't remember the outline. She used to be able to go into detail about it, but now all she vividly remembers is the Ginger Witch part. And maybe that's due to growing up, adulting, and prioritizing memories, but she's 35 and I'm 33. I remember these conversations vividly because it freaked me out so bad. I Died and Came Back by deleted Reddit user. I was at my girlfriend at the time's parents' house and suddenly started feeling really queasy. She and I headed to the kitchen so I could get a glass of water, and we stood with me leaning back against the counter and her hugging me. She was saying I had gone incredibly pale, like almost white, and my lips were going a purpley color. She looked really scared. I then say to her, I can't feel my heart, and I check my pulse. Next thing I know, I'm in this place. I can't describe it except as an absence of absolutely everything. There was a floor, but I couldn't see it. I was walking on nothing, through nothing, and surrounded by nothing. But I was there, and it was there. There were other people with me, discernible faces, clothes, and demeanors. I could see them, and they could see me, like properly see me, not just look at me, but actually see me. I feel that they could. We were all there in complete silence, just really calm and silent, in this space of nothingness. And then this bright bluish white light erupted from the distance, and it called to us, silently beckoned us all toward it. So we started walking. I don't know why, we all just felt compelled as a single entity to head towards this light. It was beautiful, really very beautiful. I have never seen a light so pure or so beautiful since. I have never felt a calm so serene, and a strange happiness was flowing through me. I could feel myself smiling and feeling like all was right with everything in the world. Suddenly, I started being dragged backwards, as if a fishing hook had just grasped my intestines from behind and was pulling me. I felt intense pain, and there was a rushing sound. The light got more and more distant, as did the people, and there was what I can only describe as a blood-curdling scream fading in from behind me. As this got louder, and as soon as the light faded, I woke up. I was on the floor of my girlfriend's kitchen. Her mother, a nurse, had just performed CPR on me, as I had been actually full-on dead, no pulse, no breathing, for about a minute. I felt like I was in that space for an eternity. The scream was my girlfriend crying hysterically at the thought of me being dead. I promptly threw up everywhere and felt instantly better. Even doctors at the hospital don't know what happened to me. I was discharged after a few hours of tests with a clean bill of health and felt completely fine. What's even stranger is apparently when I said I can't feel my heart, I passed out and fell onto my girlfriend who couldn't support me, and I fell, hitting my head off the counter and smashing into some empty bottles on the floor. Whilst I was out, I had apparently just stayed still, but smiled until I was stopped breathing. I was pale and my head and hands were freezing cold to the touch, but the rest of me was still warm. What's even stranger than that is that her pet cats freaked the literal out when I was dead and all ran out of the house, howling into the night. One of them returned the next morning. The other two were found up a tree a few blocks away, meowing incessantly. The Old Coin by D.X. Caesar. An old man gave me an old coin when I was 1 year old in the supermarket. The coin isn't from this reality. So, when I was around 1 year old, I was with my parents in the supermarket when an old man approached me, as old people do with babies, and insisted to my parents that I take his coin. My parents describe how calming and familiar the man was. I like to think it's me from the future, but that's maybe reaching a bit. So fast forward to me now, almost turning 22. I've had this coin with me the whole time. A couple of years ago, I bought a safe and thought it would be good to keep it in there. After about a month, I go back to the safe and the coin just isn't there. I had it in a little plastic case designed for cool coins. The case was there, the coin wasn't. I'm the only person that can get into that safe and the only person who's even been near it. So for 2 whole years, that coin is just lost and I was devastated. Now, here's the weird part. I'm up in the loft of my parents' house where I grew up, organizing some boxes and stuff when something falls from the ceiling and hits me on the shoulder. And what do you know? The damn coin is sat at my feet, just staring at me. I've never been so confused in my life. I never moved the coin. I hadn't been to my parents' house in forever. There's no ledge on the ceiling or anything where the coin could have fallen from. It's just materialized from thin air. UFO Story by Patty. Here's one for you that took place in Portugal in 2005. I was talking on a payphone to my girlfriend and I felt the hair on my neck stand up. I look around only to see a massive craft, and I mean massive, like 10 football fields in size. It was very low and flying just above a 3-story building. I nudged the guy next to me and said, "Do you see that?" He looked at it and then looked back at me in shock. I thought his eyes were going to pop out. His mouth was hanging open. That's the last thing I remember, because next, I woke up on a beach about a mile from where I had been shopping at my local supermarket. I heard kids laughing and women shouting. I saw them playing, and the fear that I was feeling started to leave. After this happened, I seemed to have blacked out again, only to find myself walking down the road at night. Many people I knew asked me, "Hey, how are you? Haven't seen you for a while." This kept happening. I soon realized that 5 days had passed and I remembered nothing at all from those missing days. I started to tell people about it, but stopped since it seemed I was being labeled a nutter by everyone. Before this happened, I never believed in aliens or UFOs, but I do now. Brother Doppelganger by Not Gonna Do It. While I was in my early teens at the house we grew up in, I came out of the shower, looked to the left, and saw my older brother sitting on his knees at his computer desk, and I continued on down the stairs. As I turned the corner into the great room, I saw my father on the couch where he always sits and watches the news. I then turned to the left of the room, and there was my brother laying on the carpeted floor watching TV with my father. It would be impossible for him to get downstairs without him passing me. How he got there, I have no idea. I told him all about what I saw. In this next segment, we're looking at some of the most classic and well-known cases of encounters with the strange, including sightings of unidentified flying objects, alien abductions, ghost stories, cryptid encounters, and other unexplained phenomena. So, sit back and prepare to be taken on a journey through some of the most captivating and mysterious stories of the strange and unknown. In this episode, we take a look at the Andreasson Affair, one of the most captivating abduction narratives to ever come to light. Betty Ann Luca, then Mrs. James Andreasson, reported a UFO experience to J. Allen Hynek in response to an article that mentioned his interest in receiving such reports. Dr. Hynek referred her letter to the Massachusetts chapter of MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network. After an initial interview, a team was put together to investigate Betty's reported experience. In addition to Ray Fowler, the Phase 1 MUFON team consisted of a physicist, an aerospace engineer, an electrical engineer, a telecommunications specialist, a professional hypnotist, a lie detector specialist, and a medical doctor as a consultant. Betty's report to Dr. Hynek described only her conscious memories and those of her father. The date was January 25th, 1967. At that time, Betty and her family resided in the small Massachusetts town of South Ashburnham. She was in the kitchen when the event began. Her 7 children, together with her mother and father, were in the living room. Her husband, James, was in the hospital recovering from an automobile accident. At about 6:35 p.m., the house lights suddenly began to flicker and then blinked out. A pulsating pink, then reddish-orange light shone through the kitchen window, and a strange vacuum-like feeling settled over the house, as if time was standing still. Betty told her frightened children to remain in the living room while her father checked to see where the light was coming from. When he looked out the window, he saw a group of strange-looking, small, humanoid creatures coming toward the house, moving with a strange floating, jumping motion. As they passed by the window, one of the entities looked at him. He remembered nothing after that, as he was placed in what can only be termed as a state of suspended animation. The 5 entities passed through the solid kitchen door and confronted Betty. As they passed through the door, they seemed to fade in and out of reality. This was essentially Betty's conscious memory of the experience. However, during 14 sessions of time regression hypnosis, both Betty and her daughter relived what they think occurred after the entities entered the house. The rest of Betty's family was placed in a state of suspended animation. The entities commanded Betty to follow them outside. Betty felt strangely compelled to go with them, but was concerned for her family. The entities then temporarily released Betty's oldest daughter, Becky, from her suspended state to assure Betty that her family would be all right. Becky relived this segment of the encounter under hypnosis. Betty floated through the solid wood kitchen door in line with 4 of the entities. One entity was left behind. Under hypnosis, Becky remembered this entity again releasing her from suspended animation to ask questions about the rooms in the house and to amuse her with floating balls of light. Outside, Betty was brought to a small oval-shaped craft on tripod landing gear, whereupon she floated into it. The craft accelerated upward and apparently entered a much larger craft. While on board, she was subjected to the effects of strange equipment before and after a physical examination. During the examination, a tiny BB-like object was removed from her nose. Attempts via hypnosis to learn how it got there were unsuccessful. Betty became terrorized during these probes, and the hypnotist refused to press the matter further. After the exam, Betty was placed into a tank of liquid and made to drink another liquid that had a tranquilizing effect. Soon after, she was removed from the tank and floated along a track into an alien place. While there, she underwent a traumatic experience during an encounter with a holographic-like portrayal of the death and rebirth of the legendary phoenix bird. During this experience, a booming chorus of voices told Betty that she had been chosen to show something important to the world. She then was returned home to find her family still in a state of suspended animation and guarded by the entity that was left behind. Betty and her family, under mind control of the entities, were put to bed in a state of unawareness. Betty was told she would forget her experience until an appointed time. During the abduction, the entities related to Betty that humans would fear them, but they were here to help the human race. Human time is localized, and they were not bound by time. Their technology is paraphysical in nature, and man is not made of just flesh and blood. The MUFON team was able to verify a number of facts associated with the initial segment of Betty's UFO abduction experience, including the power blackout and the approximate time that the incident began. Under hypnosis, Betty related that the event occurred in 1967 on a Wednesday. She stated that her husband was in a Veterans Administration hospital and that her parents were visiting to help out. She described the weather as balmy, with traces of snow on the ground, melting and causing the neighborhood to be enshrouded with fog. Betty's husband's hospital records showed that he was in the hospital between January 23rd and March 17, 1967. A local weather station in South Ashburnham recorded a temperature of 33 to 54 degrees with mist rising from the melting snow. Betty's parents remembered the visit, and her father remembered his brief, conscious look at the entities, which he described as Halloween freaks. The local power company confirmed the power failure and attributed it to an open circuit breaker, apparently tripped by an overloaded circuit. Unfortunately, the power company records did not give the time of the power outage. The time was established by other data. Prior to the encounter, Betty's children were watching a show on TV that featured Bozo the Clown. A check of TV records revealed that this show aired between 4:30 and 5:30 on that date. Since it was dark outside when the event began, the time of sunset was checked. This turned out to be 4:48 p.m. Under hypnosis, Betty remembered that it was around 6:35 p.m. when the lights went out. Betty's credibility was established through a character reference check, a lie detector test, and a psychiatric interview. Only the weather, television show, and the power failure could be proved as objective reality. However, Betty's and Becky's reliving of the account was consistent during an interrogation, and while having her repeat various segments of their experience while under hypnosis. Her description of the entities and her experience were also consistent with other abduction reports. Thanks for watching another episode of Strange Encounters. We'd like to thank everyone for their support, and we hope that you've all enjoyed listening to our stories. Send your own experiences with the unknown to our email at verystrangeencounters@gmail.com. You can also submit your stories to the website linked below. You can join us on Reddit at r/verystrangeencounters. If you would like to support us, there are links to our Patreon, buymeacoffee.com, and PayPal donate below. Thank you again for tuning into Strange Encounters. Remember, in a universe teeming with mysteries, our strangest encounters may just be the beginning of an extraordinary journey into the unknown.